Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Workout Wednesday. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. For returners, thanks so much for joining us again and spending your time building solutions with us. This week, we have worked together with the Tableau team, and we are presenting a challenge that can be completed in either Tableau, Power BI, or Salesforce CRM Analytics, which is where the data comes from, is Salesforce. So we're going to be building a waterfall pipeline this week, and we wanted the formatting to match the Tableau teams exactly. Because of that, we need to use a custom visual in Power BI. It's the simple waterfall visual. This way we can get our formatting to match exactly. You'll see here in the sample that I also have the inbuilt waterfall visual in Power BI. It does not have that custom formatting. So we are going to build the simple waterfall custom visual that you can get from AppSource in Power BI Desktop. So let's go ahead and jump in. In Power BI Desktop, we're going to go ahead and start by getting data. For this exercise, the data, you can either use the Salesforce connector to get data directly from Salesforce, or you can use the sample data that we have provided that exists on data.world. So we are going to use the data.world data for this exercise. I do just want to show you that there is a Salesforce connector here. You can connect to either Salesforce objects or Salesforce reports, but we're going to go ahead and just stick with data.world. Quick reminder that in order to use the data.world connector, you must have a data.world account, which is free. You don't have to put in any credit card information. You can just sign up for it. The owner of this is Lorna. We are going to use her username, and the dataset ID is Workout Wednesday 2022, week 38. We're going to go ahead and connect. And the first thing that we need to do once we connect the data is just to shape the data a tiny bit. We're going to keep only the data that we need from the opportunity table. So we're going to click on Transform Data. And we're also going to make the value for the bids that were closed that we did not win, we're going to make that value negative. Alrighty, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select the columns we want to keep. I'm going to do it by using this Choose Columns item here in the header, just so I don't have to scroll through each of the 47 columns that exist in the data set. So we're going to choose columns, and I'm going to deselect all, and then I'm just going to select the columns that we need. So looking through here, we are going to start with, apologies, these are not in alphabetical order. We're going to start with name and stage name. We're also going to get type. We need the created date and the close date. The opportunity source. And last but not least in here, we need the amount. Oh, here it is. I was about to search for it. Amount. Okay. So these are the columns that we are going to use in our waterfall chart. We're not actually using all of them, but I kept opportunity source just in case folks wanted to take a look and see, what the source is that's coming in, add some other visuals. For one thing that I want us to take a look at is if you look at created date and close date here, created date is showing in as a date time. We don't need all of that granularity, and it's going to slow our report down. So I'm going to go ahead and just switch this to a regular date. The next thing that we need to do is add a column. And the reason we're doing this is because I want to take this amount value And for any opportunities that have been closed but are lost, we want to make this amount negative. So I'm going to go ahead and add a custom column here. And in this column, I'll just call it actual amount for now, or maybe even amount 2. And here we are just going to say if the, oh wow, we can't see that anymore. I was trying to make it bigger. If the stage name is equal to closed lost, then give me the amount times -1. Otherwise, give me the amount. So it's pretty simple syntax. So this is an if-then statement in the M language. And here, just as a, quick visual check here, you can see that this first row here, oh boy, my Zoom is really going wild here. This first row, that is a closed lost opportunity, does become negative. So that's great. I do want to make sure that this is a whole number. So I am going to set the type here in the formula bar. You could also do this as its own separate step. I just like to do it this way. I think I might need a comma in there. Let's take a look. There we go. So you can see here that the type of the column has changed to an integer. I'm then actually going to remove my amount column just so I don't get confused. I'm going to rename amount 2 to amount. And there we have it. Now, there are a couple of other things that you can do, or that maybe you need to do in order to get this data ready. And that is, we need to create a dimension table where we can say for each stage name, we want it to be given a particular color. Now, there are a couple of different ways you can do this formatting, but this is how I did it for this challenge. So the way we're going to do it is I'm actually going to reference this query. So I'm going to right-click on the query, and I'm going to select reference. What this does is it essentially will give you the query, the opportunity query, you can see here. So any steps that are applied to this query will then automatically be applied to the referenced query. I'm going to rename this just so that I don't get confused here, and I'm going to make this my dimension table for the stages. And all I'm going to do is associate a particular stage name with a particular color. So the first thing that I want to do is remove all of the other columns. I don't need them, so I'm going to remove other columns here. I'm then going to remove duplicates from this column by right-clicking and removing duplicates. There we go. So now I'm just left with each of the stages. The next thing that I need to do is I need to let Power BI know what hex code I want associated with each of the stages. I also want to add an index here so that we can say, all right, the very first stage in the process should not be closed 1, obviously. That should be the last stage in the process. So we're going to go ahead and add 2 conditional columns where we're going to add both the index or the sort order for the stage and then the hex color. I'm going to just rename this here. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a conditional column from the Add Column tab of the ribbon, and I'm going to call this Stage Sort. And here, you're just going to go through and say, if the stage is equal to prospecting, because that's our first stage, we know that from looking at Lorna's visualization. So if the stage name is equal to prospecting, then it's going to be the number 1. It needs to be sorted first. If the stage name is equal to qualification, it's going to be number 2. And just a quick note here, you got to really have to make sure that you don't make any mistakes here in your spelling because they have to match exactly. So I'm going to just keep going through this, and then we will come back together to add the hex codes. Okay, so you can see here, this is the syntax that has been applied to this new column. And again, I am going to just set the type here as an integer, just so that way that'll help us to sort. Alrighty, so that is step one. So there are a couple of different ways you could do that. You could add a conditional column like we just did, or you can add a custom column and you can type out this syntax. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to do the same thing, but we are going to add the hex color for the actual bar itself. So the way that I did this is I went to Lorna's challenge. And here I used the Hex Color Picker Chrome add-in, and I just went through and started selecting each of the bars. Then what you get with the Hex Color Picker is you're able to save each of the colors that you've selected as a CSV, which is super cool. You also can see them right here, so you could copy and paste, or you can get them from the CSV, whatever you choose. And then once you have those values, you can either import those into Power BI or you can copy and paste. For the purposes of this exercise, I'm just going to copy and paste. And I'm going to do it in another actual conditional column. So I'm just going to say, if the stage is either prospecting or qualification, give me this first hex code, and so on and so forth. So we're going to add another conditional column to get these hex codes into Power BI. So we're just going to do this with some copying and pasting. Alrighty, so another conditional column. And this we're going to say, I don't know, stage formatting perhaps. And here, if the stage sort is less than or equal to 2, then give us this hex code. And then we're going to carry on. Alrighty, so you can see here that I have all of the colors added. So now I've got my dimension and I've got my opportunity table, which has our data in it. So that is our fact. I'm going to go ahead and close and apply. We're going to create a relationship, and then we're going to get started with building our visualization. Okay, first things first, let's take a peek at the model view and just make sure that that relationship is created. So we want to make sure that we are creating the relationship on stage or stage name. And it is a one-to-many relationship. That's correct. If you want to make sure that you dragged and dropped properly, you can always double-click on the line, which will open it up, and you can take a peek at your relationship. That looks good. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create a couple of measures. So the first thing we're going to do is create an explicit measure for the amount. And I'm going to just call this sales amount. So I am going to right-click here and do a new measure. I'm going to call this sales amount. Let's make this a little bit bigger so that it can be seen. And this is just going to be the sum of the amount. I am creating this explicit measure for two reasons. Number one, so that this can be formatted exactly the way I want it to, and it can be reused in different visuals. I'm also doing it this way so that we can use this sales amount in our next measure that we need to create, which is a running total. Now, you may notice sales amount doesn't appear anywhere when we create the measure, and that's because measures are created in what are called temporary tables. So if you want to check your work, you can plot the amount on the canvas here, and we'll just turn this into a table. And you'll see here the sum of the amount. Let's just go ahead and add, I don't know, the stage name just so that we have a few lines of data to look at. And then we're going to plot the new measure that we just created right next to it. This is how I like to check my work and, do a little sanity check that everything is correct. And this is looking right. That's exactly how I want it to look. Okay, so what I like to do then is to hide the amount column so that I make sure that I'm only using the column that's properly formatted. I don't get tripped up. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a running total measure. So I'm going to right click and we're going to do a new measure. I already have this written out. I'm just going to paste my syntax in. And what I did here, you'll see, is that I used variables. So here I'm saying the first variable, which really becomes a constant in Power BI, which is a little bit confusing, but the first variable I'm going to call current total. And all that's going to be is it's going to be the selected value of the stage sort, right? So if we're in stage 1, the current total is the sum of the my goodness, the sum of sales for that stage. Okay, so then we're going to do a calculate here. So we're going to say, give us the sales amount where the stage sort is less than or equal to the current total for all stages. And this syntax is a little bit off. It's from my other report, and it is dim stage stage. If you have any questions about this measure, this comes from the SQL BI team. It's just sqlbi.com. I'm going to go ahead and format this again in the same way. And then once again, I'm just going to plot this on my table so that we can make sure that the running total makes sense. It's coming up blank, so let's just check and see what I did. Okay. I can see the error of my ways here, and this is a reason why I like to hide columns. I'm using the stage name column from the opportunity table, and if you look in our calculation itself, we should be using it from the stage dimension. So let's just go back here and fix that, and then everything will work as designed. So I'm going to remove stage name from the opportunity table. I'm going to bring it in from the dimension. I'm going to go ahead and sort the stage column by the stage sort column. There we go. Okay, now they're in the exact order that we want them to be. And here we have our running total, and it is looking like it is making sense. So from prospecting to qualification, 23 plus 53 is 77, so on and so forth. So again, a nice way to check your DAX is to just plot a table on your canvas and go from there. Okay, I'm going to remove this because we don't want a table. We're going to get more visuals, and we're going to get the simple waterfall visual. I'm sure there are other custom visuals that would work for this challenge. This is just the one that I picked. We're going to add it to the report, and you'll see when you add custom visuals to your report, they appear in the visualizations pane. If you want these to always appear in every report, you can right-click on them and you can pin them to the visualizations pane, and then you'll always see these. But I tend to keep them separate if I'm only using them in one report. Okay, so in the sample, I added some shapes to the top and the bottom for formatting. We're going to skip that here. And we are going to start formatting our waterfall visual. Here you can see we've got a category to fill and the values to fill. And this actually should be pretty self-explanatory. Our category here is going to be stage. And the values are going to be the total. Okay, So this is looking similar to what we want, with the exception of, well, a few things. I'm not a huge fan of all these extra lines that we have on the canvas. We want to make sure that the formatting is correct for the values. We want these to look like currency. And then, of course, we want to add the tooltip that we had in the sample where you could see the running total for each stage. And then last but not least, we want to figure out the colors. So the first thing I'm going to do is just mess around with the formatting here. We're going to remove some grid lines. And we're going to bump up the font size, always to size 12. We're going to hide these grid lines. I'm going to do the same thing with the y-axis. Hide these grid lines. Okay, it's looking a little bit more clean. The next thing that I want to take a look at are the labels. Again, I'm going to bump these up to 12. And I'm not entirely sure why they are not formatted as currency. So let's just take a look here. First of all, let's categorize these as millions. Oh, interesting. Okay, so that gave us our correct formatting. So that's great. Alrighty, and then the last thing we need to do to make this look the way we want is we need to get these bar colors to be all customized. Now, interestingly, you cannot do it here. What we're going to need to do is to figure out how to set a rule for each bar. And I believe in this custom visual, let's take a look at where I did that. Alrighty, so the way that we are going to get this custom formatted is we need to turn off this format using sentiments. I think that's what that says. Let's just make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, format using sentiments. We're going to turn this off and watch what happens to the bar color when we turn that off. Aha. So now we can do our custom formatting here and we can just format it as a value. Alrighty, so here we're going to say for prospecting, we're going to use a field value. It's going to be the first color. There we go. And now you can see we only had to do it once and it formatted all of the bars correctly. So that's it. That is this week's challenge. It was a quick one. I hope that you found it interesting. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And as always, have fun with the challenge. Post your results on social media, your charts on social media. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you next week in Workout Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us.